A very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the second edition of CMO Week presented by ABP News. The changes we saw in 2020 will have far-reaching implications for many product categories in 2021. At CMO Week 2.0, through a series of panel discussion with marketing leaders, we will deep dive into several product segments that have undergone a sea of change and are tackling a new reality this year. To begin with, I would like to thank our sponsors, presenting partner ABP News, associate partner Shutterstock. Now introducing you to the moderator of the session, Ms. Ashwini Gangal, Executive Editor at afaqs. Once again, thank you everyone. Before we start, can we please have the AV?
न पाबंदी हो न कोई हद हो तो बस खुद बनाई सरहद हो। ये मुहिम है परतों में छिपे हर सच की तलाश की, सियासत पर रखी पैनी नजर और आंख की, खबरों की दुनिया में एक जिम्मेदार आवाज की, जुर्म और जुल्म के खिलाफ हर बेबस के लिए इंसाफ की। जब कोई हद नहीं इंसानियत के लिए जज्बात की, जब कोई हद नहीं खुशियों और ख्वाब की, तब कोई हद क्यों हो नए नजरिए और बदलाव की। तोड़ के हदों के ताले नए सपनों को पाले, बांधे सबको एक धागे, आपको रखे आगे। एबीपी न्यूज।
Thank you. Over to you, Ashwini.
Okay. Thank you so much, Abhinav. Hi, everybody. Warm welcome formally to my panelists. Hi, audience. Thank you for being here. Now, welcome to CMO Week. This conference is our way of slicing the Indian consumer marketing pie and of analyzing the consumer insights, behavior patterns, and trends that marketers like my panelists keep a very close eye on in a bid to make sure their products keep moving off the shelf. But before I go to my stellar panel and pass the baton to them, I'd like to give a very quick preamble. Now, this is the second edition of CMO Week. We had the first edition last year, and at the time, we established quite clearly that immunity and hygiene were the two hottest consumer-facing product groups of 2020. Now, while they do continue to remain very important for obvious reasons, in 2021, we see that categories that stand out are actually those that strive very hard to bring ease and convenience to the life of the time-strapped, somewhat burnt-out consumer. So that's the theme for the entire week. And today, specifically, we're here to discuss the instant packaged food market. This includes ready-to-cook and ready-to-eat products. These are essentially kitchen hacks or cooking shortcuts that make life easy for the Indian consumer in the kitchen. I have with me Ashu from ITC, I have Kiran from Nilons, Bikran from Jubilant, Shailesh from Mother's Recipe, and Rahul from ID Fresh. Now, it's a very assorted panel because these panelists represent different types of hacks. So I'll quickly run through them before I welcome them for opening remarks. We've got the frozen variety, the freezer to the frying pan variety. We've got the heat and eat type or the add hot water to type of product, which brings cooking time under 3 minutes. And it's like an instant poha or instant upma. Then we've also got the type of product that looks to simplify one step in an otherwise complicated cooking process. So examples include, say, chopped packaged onions or smart onions, and we've got garlic paste, for instance, or a ready-made gravy paste or a curry from a packet. Then we've also got the flavor type, which is essentially designed to uplift an otherwise bland home cooked meal. So an example of that would include, say, a cooking Szechuan sauce. And of course, not the least, we've got batters. So batters for idli, dosa, and vada, which make something which otherwise requires a lot of behind the scenes preparation, overnight preparation and fermentation. It makes that also an instant product. So, and of course, everything else in between if I've missed any other variety. So on that note, I'd like to invite all my panelists in no specific order to give us their quick opening remarks. Now, for your opening remarks, I'd like you to focus on two, three things specifically. Talk about how the demand curve has, how it's grown over the past 6 to 12 months for you, what it looks like, what the spike is like for you and the products in your portfolio. Also talk about the popular products. So in your collection of ready to cook or ready to eat products, talk about the products that have really given you a lot of value over the last 6 to 12 months, and also give us a sense of what people are demanding, what do consumers want specifically in the RTC slash RTE segment. So we can begin anywhere. Let's begin with Ashu. Your opening remarks, please.
Thanks, and hi everyone. I'll talk from a frozen foods category. That's what I represent. The category has obviously seen some phenomenal growth in the last 12 months. We know the obvious reasons for that. Because consumers seeking convenience and hot, tasty food at home, which can be, created and produced quickly, was something that consumers were seeking out, and frozen kind of really sat in the middle of that. In fact, I like to believe that, I like this term, and it's a term we were coining internally, saying that the freezer today is the new pantry. And that's how we see it, right? Because in the last 12 months or so, the category has obviously 40–50%. We have done exceedingly well. We've grown by about 3 times in the last 12 months over previous years. And the trend continues. I think this latest, the second surge that's happening might just, further accentuate this. What I think is happening is that the category has also undergone a change. So it's moved away from being a kind of only one product, which is like, let's say, potato snack, which is fried and delivered to the consumer. Great product, great tasting, but in a way, one product. So now you have a variety of product that is out there on offer. And if you look at our portfolio, you have kebabs. We've got about a range of 7 kebabs, from sheikh kebab, the Caribbean, the Mediterranean kebabs, to dahi kebab, the beetroot kebab, a range of kebabs, which are versatile products. So you can use them in wraps, you can use them in burgers, you can use them as rice bowls. Then there's a range of burger patties that got launched. So the product portfolio has undergone a dramatic change. I think that's the demand of a consumer from a variety-seeking consumer, because he's constantly seeking variety, he's seeking versatility with the product. Because if you look at the housewife, with her original pantry, she could put together various products and serve it to the family in a quick time. Now she just has to go to the freezer, take out a product. She can decide how she wants to mix and match it and offer it to consumers, to her family. Importantly, it is served hot. Importantly, it is hygienic, because you know where it's coming from and you're cooking it right in front of you. Some of the attributes that the housewife is looking at when she's putting together her. And the best is that it's convenient, right? You can put it together in 5, 8, 7, 9 minutes and do it yourself. So I think that's helping grow the category. Frozen has had its challenges in the past, because we have distribution challenges, access challenges. There are capacity issues at home, because you have a freezer which is kind of takes about everything, right? It takes your ice cubes, ice cream, even your frozen snacks. So that is limited. So you need to get frequency going. You need to improve access points. I think a lot of that is falling in place. But most importantly, consumer, resistance, which was an issue earlier, where you had this whole myths around frozen and whether it has preservatives, good for me. Those have kind of softened to a large extent. Consumers have started to open up to this, which I think is the most important if you ask me, has been a marketing piece which none of us as an industry has led, but it's happened out of just the fact that you had this unfortunate pandemic. Yeah.
So I will get back to you, Ashu, about the psychological barriers that are still in place, but we'll get to that in a bit. Vikram, why don't you go next?
Hi. So mine is probably the newest business on this panel. We are just about 5-6 months old in the market. Our philosophy was quite simple. When we looked at white spaces within the packaged foods industry, when we were doing our strategy and planning in terms of where do we want to enter from, we felt that this whole area of ready-to-cook was quite interesting. And within ready-to-cook also, when we looked at the categories, what we found was that there were two ways you could go. One was about making everyday cooking simpler. So can I give you a solution to make your dal, roti, sabji somehow faster? The other, and which seemed to be the more interesting option for us, was to look at aiding consumers to try and experience new types of foods at home. So where consumers were used to ordering, for example, Chinese food from outside, normally from a restaurant, can we give solutions to make quick and easy solutions at home? And that's the direction which we chose to do. Mind you, there was no COVID when we were thinking like this. When COVID has come and has accelerated all this tenfolds, these categories have started growing much faster. People are screaming for these kind of convenient solutions, and they are sort of rooted in very, very important and very basic consumer needs. Things like, I would like to make a different food at home because it makes me feel like I'm a global citizen, for example. That's a big trend which plays out. Consumers want to make Thai, want to make Chinese, want to make Italian, etc. at home. When we spoke to consumers, we're trying to understand why don't they do a lot more of this. A lot of practical issues, things like, I don't know the recipe, I don't have the time to learn the recipe, how do I make a Manchurian at home? I just don't know how to put the whole thing together. Things like, some products need exotic ingredients which are not easily available. For me to source them is a challenge. For me to, if I get them also, there's a lot of wastage because I'll use them for once and then I don't have any other use for them. I may not make the same dish again. So we went down this path of trying to give simple, easy solution to make foods which you would normally not eat at home. And that sort of has played out well for us. We believe that this is a huge trend which is going to play out in the long run, because today, people are experimenting a lot more in the kitchens than they ever have before. People are also eating a lot more outside the home, different types of cuisines, and there will eventually be a need to bring them home.
That's right.
So today we start with a small range of Indian and Chinese products, but tomorrow it could be Italian, day after it could be Thai, and so on and so forth. And there is no end to this experimentation in the consumer's home. So we believe that this is where the industry will shift now. If you look at the long-term development of packaged food, we essentially started off by people starting to use masalas and spices at home, those kind of products which were value added, but not to that extent, to give solutions at home. We believe things are moving now. Things are moving towards more value addition, towards simplification, and we believe it will happen more from people trying to experiment with new types of food at home, rather than they will find solutions, of course, for the kind of food they make at home on a regular basis. But I think that will happen probably in a big way in phase 2. It will start by people using these solutions and tools to bring in foods which they normally don't eat at home.
Right. I'll come back to you. I have lots of questions about the new range, Vikram. Sailesh, your opening remark, the demand curve and the type of products people are patronizing.
Yeah. So, hi, everybody. Hi again. I represent Mother's Recipe. The categories which we are into, and I want to kind of quickly talk about them beyond pickles, because we are known as a leading pickle company. But beyond that, there is a large amount of categories we play into. We are in more than 12, 14 categories, and of them is RTC. So we are in RTC, ready to cook. We are in ready to eat. We are in instant mixes. We were talking about, Ashwini was talking about the paste. So we are into ginger garlic paste and and tamarind paste, and these are again huge convenience things for the consumer. It is not really the standard RTE, which is taking out a dal and warming it up and eating it, but it is also these products like ginger garlic paste and all, and tamarind paste, and I'll kind of talk about it, which have got a huge amount of acceptance by the consumers during this these difficult times and different times, I would say. Also, it kind of also helped us to build new categories during this time. So during this time, in the last, I would say last 12 months, we have built a portfolio of Indian chutneys. So we now give to the market good quality, hygienic samosa chutney and a bhel puri chutney and a pani puri chutney. And we've also launched a Deshi Szechuan. And in this difficult times, and this has been a blessing in disguise for us, because there was a large amount of acceptance of the product, because there was a lot of home cooking which was happening. Coming to the spike, obviously, as Ashu said, for food business, it was a very branded food businesses and packaged food business. It was a huge spike because of the way the consumption pattern changed, and therefore the growth was in multiples on the business. But what I can also tell you is that the growth also happened at different channels. So while we are present across modern retail and general trade and e-commerce and government channels like CSD and all, we saw that our greatest spike happened in general trade, and followed by e-commerce. E-commerce has grown for most of the food companies not less than 3 to 4 times, no matter how big they were in e-commerce. It has been a big thing, and therefore a large amount of consumption patterns have changed. A lot of consumers who were earlier not consuming food products through the e-commerce are now doing that. Today, if you kind of go to a leading e-commerce provider, they take about 4 days or 5 days to deliver the product, which used to earlier be 2 hours or 3 hours they would deliver. That is the kind of rush they got. So the spike significantly came from a different channel, and it has also helped us to increase our consumer base by just reaching out to the consumers, by making the product available, by servicing the market well. It has also helped us to go to new customers. So a lot of general trade coverage and build outlets have gone up, as they call it in sales. So line cuts have gone up and build outlets have gone, and the depth of the products have gone up. So that has been the thing. In terms of the consumption patterns, as was being said earlier, there is a huge amount of change which is happening on consumption. So our ready to cook, so our ready to cook, as we call it, is a pre-mixed spice we have, which is a pre-mixed spice which with oil, little bit of oil in it. So you can actually pick up a butter chicken masala veg spice. It's a veg spice, but it is especially made for butter chicken masala, and you can pick it up, put it in the thing, and you can add the thing, and you can make the dish in about 15 minutes.
Shailesh, I will come back to you about the distribution piece of the puzzle. It's very interesting what you said, but let's just get quick opening remarks from Rahul and Kiran in that order.
Sure.
Thanks, Ashwini. Convenience is actually a part of innate human nature, and I must tell everyone, the panelists and everyone, that actually, I was actually at a hospital recently, not for any bad reason, but about 6-12 months ago, had my second baby come into the world, and I was having a chat with the doctor, and obviously I was in the thick of business, calls were coming, and that's when I actually learned about the importance of convenience. The doctor advised us that don't give the bottle milk to the infant, otherwise he'll stop taking breast milk. And I was like, why does the infant do that? He said, doctor, he finds it more convenient. He just it's more milk comes in from the bottle, it's tasty. And that's when it actually struck me that how innately convenience as a need is driven into human psyche. Even an infant, for example, is searching for convenience the first time he or she is consuming food. And I don't know why that is the way it is, but you fast forward to adults and to the food industry, you see that convenience is being sought in all industries. When people
that's a theme. Yeah, that's a theme, Rahul. Absolutely. Yeah.
It is, I was handling snacks much before I handled this one ID, and the snacks industry has been growing at what, a CAGR of 25% for the last 10-12 years from 5,000-6,000 crores is now 30,000 crores. And the only thing that has driven the snacks industry growth is convenience. It's just that that convenience was out of home. Yeah, people were moving out. Now, when people stop moving out and they get back inside, it's not that they need changes. They're still looking for convenience, whether it's outside or homemade. It just so happens that all of us who are operating in categories that we are discussing today happen to be in-home consumption. None of us are really snacks.
That's right.
So all of us, the whole need of convenience has moved in-home, and that's what's driven growth. I think across all the portfolios that we are talking about. The couple of consumer trends that we noticed was that one thing that you noticed was people are spending more time at home. Second thing is that people are they're more family members at home. Otherwise, a husband would usually go out to office, or you also had people having their parents or in-laws come over, and all of them are nestled inside the home. What that does to the person who's working in the kitchen is that that person now not only has to cook meals for more number of people who are there inside the house. It is also, she's having to cook it more often. The husband would otherwise be out. So what's happening is that how much the workload on the person in the kitchen has gone up manyfold. That has resulted in something that we call kitchen fatigue. Yeah, I mean, how many times can you just keep making paranthas? How many times can you, okay, I used to make 5 earlier. Now there's work also, there's work from home also, and I have to make 15. Because of that kitchen fatigue, the importance of convenience in the kitchen has gone up. And ID was in a place where we had quite a few products. Some of you may be aware that we make paranthas, or paranthas as they're called in West and North India, or paranthas as they call in South India. They are fresh paranthas. They are 5-day, 6-day, 7-day shelf life, depending on the kind of parantha you're eating. And so what happened was that because the kitchen fatigue that I was explaining, home-cooked chapatis and paranthas got replaced by other meals. And one immediate replacement was, let's buy fresh paranthas because they are the next best to homemade. Because they don't have preservatives, they're fresh, and consumer in the mind is always trying to balance convenience, taste, health, variety, and cost. Yeah. So paranthas saw 70-80%. Sorry, you want to ask something?
No, I want to actually move on to Kiran's opening remarks. I'll come back to you on that because when you say convenience, I do have a counter to that, and you said it yourself. It's probably health, So I wonder if there's a health convenience trade-off at play somewhere. I'll come back to you.
Sure.
Yeah, Kiran, please, your opening remarks so we can get on to the questions.
Hi Ashwini and hi everyone. My name is Kiran. I represent Nilons. This pandemic is actually happened to be a boom to us. Everybody knows essential commodity items, etc. Few things which I've remarkably noticed is that one thing which probably everyone missed is social media is playing a huge role in it. I think the number of chefs, cooks, and photographers which we have understood this country has would it not be possible before this pandemic, and that actually helped actually accentuate the growth in most of this category. Shailesh was speaking about chutneys, etc. Okay, and Vikrant was speaking about certain spices. One thing which is very, very unique, which I've seen at Nilons, is that there are certain markets which are not a natural selection for some of the Western blended spices. For example, pasta. Whenever we talk about something called as pasta, which is very convenient to cook, what image comes to our mind is generally tier 1 metro markets, etc. But what we have seen that because of the social media integrations, etc., we have seen that people are participating into making into the recipes which are not just Indian, but the Western one, be it pasta making, pizza making, or chow mein or Chinese kind of stuff. And that is where we have seen a surge of 3x, 4x in last 12 months. For example, when we talk about pasta, obviously the hinterland like Bihar, Jharkhand never will naturally come to your mind. But what we have seen is that we are selling about 2 million packs of pasta masala in the markets like Bihar and Jharkhand, which actually is about more than 1.2 crores, 1.4 crores, in a 6 months gap. Now, why it is happening is, I think, obviously people are at home, but social media has really, really created, such a surge because everybody wants to share their recipes, etc. Obviously, marketers are also feeding into it. That's one. Number two, what we have seen that earlier most of the consumption packs were bigger, but now they are moving to a smaller packs. It's because probably people who are at a home, they are trying to have a tailor-made recipe for them. Even a single day where there is a family of 4 or 5 people, there might be 2 or 3 recipes being made in a single day at a single time. That is where we have seen in the surge of the small packs, 5 rupee packs, etc. That's also there's another reason for that, because people nowadays, when we are putting their sachets, etc., in a refrigerator, they don't want to reuse that packs, because what happens is that your chutneys or spices, etc., they become soggy. So people are open to have a smaller packs, and they're open to the newer recipes, etc. And probably the biggest engine which is actually filling this probably is social media. That is what we have seen in our last 2 years.
Okay, very interesting. Huh? Both your points, very interesting. The pack size and the other one as well. Great. Thank you for those opening remarks. Now, I can see some questions coming in from the audience. Keep them coming, guys. We'll get to them in due course. But I'll start with a question of my own. I want all of you to weigh in on this. I want to understand what the competitive landscape looks like from where you're sitting, because the RTC and RTE category, to my mind, doesn't just compete with other RTC players. So the faces on the screen are only one part of the competitive puzzle. There's the Swiggy Zomato space. There's also the other type of instant snack space, you know, the Maggi noodles, the Saffola oodles of the world. So there's also the culinary enthusiast, someone who prefers freshly cut onions over vacuum packed onions. So it reminds me of what the founder of Netflix once said, that we don't compete with Amazon Prime alone. We compete with sleep, and we compete with the book you might want to read during your downtime. So just to bring that analogy here, I want to understand, you know, Vikran, Ashu, all of you, what does your competitive landscape look like? Do you compete with the, you know, is it instant meals versus instant snacks versus other, you know, how does it, what's the landscape like?
Sure, I'll get started. So, Ashwini, the way we look at competition is that, as you very rightly said, RTC, the category in which we operate with Chef Boss, essentially sits at the intersection of multiple categories within packaged foods, and then there's this whole competition set outside packaged food itself. So over my years, even before I was doing this assignment, and I've dealt with RTC for many years, the biggest issue with RTC comes with masalas to start with first. How do you prove value of a biryani masala versus a biryani RTC? How do you convince the consumer that why should he pay that much more for a biryani RTC when he can buy a biryani masala? And to sort of prove to him that it is far more convenient has been a challenge and a struggle for RTC as a category for many years.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the first point of intersection. The second point of intersection is RTE. Then the next one is that why should I bother putting together something? This is also like packaged food only. I might as well buy the packet from outside. And the third intersection, of course, is this whole Swiggy, Zomato, outside food coming home, especially in the kind of products I'm doing. If I'm doing a Szechuan or a Manchurian, you can buy a Szechuan and a Manchurian outside. Sure, it'll be a little more expensive than you making it yourself, but saves you the hassle. I think what works for this category is the consumer who is fond of cooking, the consumer who wants to create. This is a great solution for them to get started. Of course, as your proficiency and culinary skills develop, you may want to start doing a lot more yourself and trying to do recipes from scratch. But for the everyday time-strapped consumer who doesn't want to always eat out and wants to create and wants to be seen as somebody who can create food, not only from a nurturing and a taking care of family perspective, but for their own self. You know, I feel great that I could create something. I take a nice photo. I think Kiran was talking about social media. I could take a nice photo and put it up. Because the great thing about RTC is that it can be a secret between you and the packet, right? Nobody needs to know what you're doing in the kitchen. It's a great product where you can add your signature, you can make it spicier, you can put more garlic, you can do XYZ with it, and therefore customize it. But yes, you're right that from a competition perspective, it intersects with multiple categories and even beyond its categories. And that's why RTC is taking the time it is taking to really come on its own in our country. It's still a relatively small category. Somebody was talking about the snacking category, and this, compared to those snacking biscuits, these kind of categories, RTC is very, very nascent.
That's right.
And I think till the time the value proposition, the consumer starts appreciating the value proposition, we will continue to see some of these problems. Of course, COVID has helped. COVID, you were out of choices. You had no choice but to start using these products because you had no choice of eating out, right? Last year. And therefore, these products started gaining traction. Hopefully, this is the beginning of these categories seeing mass adoption.
Right. So, Ashu, do you agree with him? I mean, how do you look at your competitive landscape when it comes to frozen foods, especially? We know there is a bunch of you. There's McCain and there's some others in the same space. So that's only one part of the puzzle, I'm sure.
So frozen to me is a format, right? I'm in the business of providing hot, tasty food to my consumer. At the moment, this category played on the side of the plate, right? It wasn't in the center of the plate. So it was a snacking category. You wanted to have an evening snack, you want to have a samosa, you want to have a nugget, or you want to pick up fries, or you want to pick up something else. But today, the whole piece is about providing this hot, tasty food to the consumer and getting to the center of the plate. And if you look at the range that we've therefore rolled out under the ITC MasterChef, so you have like 6 burger patties that allows you to actually have a meal with your family, everyone having his own burger stroke wrap. You have about 6-7 kebabs that can be converted into rice bowls or stuff like that. So for us, you're right, the competitive landscape is not, so frozen, as I said, is just a format, right, to me. I'm actually competing with the Swiggies and the Zomatos of the world. I'm trying, consumers who are ordering in, I'm telling them, why do you need to do that? You can actually make hot, tasty food at home. You know, in 5 to 8 minutes, you don't even have to bother about delivery times. It'll be cold. Is it, you know, which kitchen did it come from, etc. Right. And therefore, what's important for us is to get into her kitchen. I think once you do that, once you're part of her pantry, so as to say, I think you've made your first, and therefore you have to ensure you're tasty. You can continuously offer variety for her to use you more frequently. The battle for us is to get into the kitchen, and I think that's what the entire endeavor is. Once you're there, you will obviously have times when you're going to be used and not being used, which is fine. You might be used once a week, but the idea is get in, and I think that's what the last 12 months have shown in terms of a lot of new consumers coming and you know, for us. So yes, it is a larger category, and we are happy to see it that way rather than from the prism of it being a frozen food category alone.
That's right. Great. So, Rahul, if you want to answer this one, go ahead. But I do have a specific question for you, which is about distribution. So I want to understand from you what your distribution pipeline looks like, you know, offline versus online, within online. I know you've recently invested in your own D2C channels for filter coffee. So how much of it is really aggregator dependent and how much of it is your own branded D2C e-com pipeline? And of course, I'd like the others to come in as well, because distribution is an important aspect.
So you want me to move on to distribution, or can I take 2 minutes on the previous question?
Yeah, go ahead. You can answer both.
Okay, yeah. On the competition piece, I think you made a very interesting point on the way Netflix CEO had defined it. So, you know, overall food, yeah, every calorie competes with another calorie. You know, I could eat rice, I could eat wheat, I could not eat. So the biggest enemy of food industry would be fasting. Yeah, by that time. So the more people start fasting, the food industry would be in trouble. But if you were to actually say how we define competition, you know, we don't keep it so broad and generic. The first level of competition will be branded category competition. So paneer will compete with paneer, you know, curd will compete with curd. So that's the first way to define it. The second way to define is that we do versus homemade. You know, batter can be made at home, parota can be made at home. So you're competing against homemade raw materials or ingredients. The third benefit is actually the consumer benefit based. So instead of consuming me fresh, you can go and do something else fresh. You can order from a gourmet garden or a ping this, yeah. And fresh is competing against fresh. We may be very different categories, but we are in some way broadly competing. The fourth is alternate sources. Yeah, we could. So our 2 categories actually compete with restaurants. Filter coffee, which you only otherwise get at restaurants. We are saying that we bring it at home. So our prime competition is restaurants there. Yeah. And the other one being Malabar Paronta. You know, you can't make Malabar Paronta at home. You can only order in from outside. So that's the fourth, the alternate sources with. Then
you have different rivals for different products on your portfolio. Very interesting.
Yeah, we do. And then, there is, in fact, all of us are as much friends as rival. We are actually also competing on occasions,
Okay.
breakfast, lunch, evening snack. These are the 5 ways in which we are defining our competition. Obviously, it
Okay.
gets very broad as you move away.
Yeah.
Coming to distribution, if I
Yeah.
have time.
Yeah, sure.
On distribution, ID does have a very unique distribution model. At least I haven't seen it much in the FMCG industry, having been around for so many years. It's direct store to factory, zero inventory everywhere. So there's nothing, zero inventory everywhere, including the consumer. So people go, we make it in the factory in the night. It leaves the factory by the morning. The store gets the stock by 9 a.m. We give 1 day of stock because we have daily service. So we give 1.2 days of stock so that we don't leave. Say consumers buys it, keeps it in the fridge, can't store it, can't keep it in the freezer. It'll spoil the product, and the consumer, consumes it immediately as well. It's a unique distribution model which requires the entire. We reach about 30,000 stores in India, and we covering mostly cities in South and West. Yet to launch Delhi. The thing that is, it really works for us is that for this to happen, you need to be having, we have our own salesmen in-house and our own vehicles in-house, which allows us this kind of flexibility. Over the pandemic, our distribution for the first wave, we had actually, we could not distribute in as many cities, and we had to cut down on distribution and cut down our products. But as we're going forward, coming hopefully out of the second lockdown a month, 2 months from now, we've expanded our distribution. And this unique distribution model supports the fresh category very well. It may not be possible in long shelf life category. We've launched our own D2C. It's primarily a third-party driven, a Razorpay, Shopify, and a Shadowfax integration.
Okay. Contrast that with Sailesh's distribution. So it's interesting. So how much of your stuff actually sells online? I know a bulk of it is offline. And also, Kiran, talk about the online-offline distribution divide, just so we get a sense, both of you.
Right now, Nilons primarily is quite offline. We are quite GTV because we are catering to hinterland. I mean, we still have a long way to go when it comes to online ordering, when it's talking about HSM markets, etc. So even our presentation in modern trade is quite minimal, but that is what Nilons is about. When I work with a company which is into fruit shakes, which is the beverages, yes, we have taken this opportunity of a COVID to start our own D2C model, and we have, from 0 to around 20% of our business was coming from online. And that's quite obvious because the people who are into the millennials, Gen Z, etc., they are now ordering by themselves, etc. And obviously, because of the situation, everybody is like in earlier part of the discussion when we said that every online organization is actually commerce portals is out of stocks, and the order deliveries are extending to 4-5 days, etc. That was never heard of. And that is how it is actually quite interesting. We have actually started building our D2C website at the start of this pandemic, and we could manage to get around 20% of our sales contribution from that. That's huge in my early organization.
All right. Sailesh, you froze back there. You could answer that now.
Yeah. So no, Kiran started, so I wanted him to kind of complete it. Okay, so online is, as we all know, online has kind of grown multiple times. And I think what is important to know is that where you were earlier, before, and where you are today. So while the overall business grew, our online business has kind of grown from 3% share of the total business, to now about 9-10%. And while the overall business has also grown. So online has been therefore a big shift of channel, and I think it's a critical channel now. You can't ignore it. It kind of competes and complements extremely well the general trade and the modern retail and the food services segment, as well as your CSD segment and the institutional segment. So and I think it is actually helping you grow the consumer base. A lot of consumers are very savvy on online interactions, and therefore you are able to you can actually make the consumer try your product through online, and then she or he can kind of shift to buying the product on a regular basis.
That's interesting. Okay.
In fact, we have our own website, and where you can order directly from our website and we deliver home. So there is a minimum cutoff bill value, and we deliver complimentary the product home anywhere in in India. And it is something which we were earlier doing more to kind of keep it as a channel, a live channel kind of a thing. But today it's a very workable channel for us, and a break-even channel for us.
Okay. Okay. Now, I do have a question around health, but before that, Vikram, very quickly, I want to understand, I want to understand Domino's, Ekdum, and Chef Boss, okay, from a delivery perspective, because what I'm trying to get at is with Domino's, that's your mainstay, if I may say that, with QSR home delivery, it's ready to consume quite literally. But for Chef Boss, the last mile is actually fulfilled, to use an e-com term, in the kitchen. So it's a little different. And of course, Ekdum is it's like any other biryani you may order from a Zomato. So what really changes? And since it's a very young space you've entered for you, the FMCG RTC space, how much has your orientation really changed or pivoted? Because you're used to a certain kind of delivery model with Domino's. So explain that shift.
So yeah, that's an interesting question because while there are a lot of synergies at the back end of the business, so in terms of, for example, product development, sourcing, there's a lot of synergies for me to create great packaged food. So I come from a very, very packaged foods industry kind of background into a company which is not really a packaged foods company, but is getting into one.
Yes.
And what struck me first when I joined the organization was the capability of the product development team. In most FMCG companies, at least from a lot of the ones where I've worked, the innovation agenda is essentially driven between R&D and marketing. And R&D comprises of food technologists, by and large food technologists, who are great and they understand flavors and they understand ingredients really well. But when I came into this organization, it was essentially R&D is manned by chefs. And they sort of, while in packaged food companies also you do have chefs, but these guys, because of their sheer interaction with consumers on a day in and day out basis, because they go to the restaurant and meet the consumers, their understanding of consumer taste preferences, at least what I found, was at a different level. And that really helped me sort of build my own product range and help me sort of put together the Chef Boss brand much more easier than what I had anticipated when I joined the organization, that how long it will take me to sort of put this whole proposition together. So that was great. In the front end, of course, it's a completely different ballgame. Retail, multi-brand retail distribution versus having your own riders and doing your own delivery is a completely different challenge.
Right.
And therefore, and that's where I guess people like us come in, who have come from and that's why the organization chooses to get people from the FMCG industry when they want to build an FMCG business. Right. So that we can bring those learnings and we can use our contacts and we can sort of build a team of people who understand this and start building the distribution.
Yeah, great. So now about the health question I've been trying to get to for a while now. Ashu, you can come in here because, I spoke to a few people before this panel and there's a general sense that if it comes out of a packet, it's not that healthy, but you have to make do with it because you want that kind of, you want to save time. So are we not communicating adequately and telling people that it's not as bad as you think? Or, because the messaging is more about convenience. It's less about this is not as unhealthy as you might imagine. So because vacuum packed onions, for example, it's part of your portfolio, smart onions. Now, freshly cut onions and vacuum packed onions, definitely there is a health trade-off somewhere. I trade health for convenience. So how would you respond to that? And is there a gap to be filled on the advertising front, perhaps, for the health conscious consumer?
So first, from a portfolio perspective, when I look at frozen, just for everyone on the group and the panel, none of our product has any added preservatives, right? Frozen by nature, if you use the frozen freezing technology, I mean, we do it at homes all the while. Our mothers have been doing it for ages, whether it has been masalas or whether it's been our own food, you can, freeze and have it. So technically, because FSSAI has rules in terms of longevity of product, you can actually freeze a product which is at -18 can literally be there forever with some small change in taste and doesn't need any preservative. So our products don't have that. Now, on mindsets, yes, there is an issue. It is a big challenge. People still carry this, I would call it a myth around it. And I think the only way you can break that, and the first entry point to that is really around taste. If you, because we've been doing groups, we've done various communication forums, we've also looked at roping in the industry to help with this. The US had this problem for many, many years in the 80s and 90s, and then they got together. We coined a term called frozen is the new fresh in a way, because it is actually fresher than fresh, because you do the entire freezing when it's just cooked for you, including your green peas, and when you pluck it from the farms, and within some 18 hours, 16 to 18 hours, it's all frozen and done and ready to be shipped to your homes, while the peas that the fresh peas that you consume at home could be 3 days old, right? It is in all ways much fresher than fresh, and that's why we coined this frozen is the new fresh.
Okay.
However, there is an issue. There is a challenge on people doing that and the communication. And I think the industry will continuously have to do that and get consumers to slowly. And as I said, like COVID, the pandemic opened one door, right?
Yeah.
The category growing, people's adaptability, a little bit of the myths going away because, oh, it's so great tasting. I didn't know it had no preservatives. Really go behind the pack. But if I was to go and tell consumers like we do in our groups and say, look, this doesn't have preservative, the instant thing from most panelists is that, nahin, ye nahi ho sakta. 9 months can't be. How does your product stay for 9 months? Nahin, kuch to dala hoga, aap batate nahi ho, it's so you got two ways to do it. You got to communicate, of course. Education is important. Sure. But you also have to make sure if your products are tasty, I'm telling you, consumers over a while will say, okay, great. Yeah, this is like,
of course, I mean, India is a taste market. Taste is a whole different thing. So we're almost out of time, but I do want to give everyone a chance to give closing remarks, but we'll curtail it to a one-word closing remark, okay? I just want you to name one product category that you think will help the growth of the RTC segment, of the ready-to-cook, ready-to-eat products that you have on your plate right now. Name some other product category that is going to help this grow in the next 6 months. Rahul?
We have to name one of our categories which will help.
No. Any category out there. So, for example, refrigerators with large freezers are going to help Ashu's portfolio. Simple, because there's a real estate problem right there in my fridge. So, like that. Name a product category that will aid the growth of the RTC category.
In fact, sorry, but you've already given my answer. One of the reasons why actually we operate in UAE as well as in India, and one of the reasons, the bottlenecks that we keep hitting in India is the chiller space. And chiller space is unfortunately only limited in large modern trade stores and independent stores. And in groceries, it becomes fridge. And when you go to smaller groceries, it doesn't exist, which is very different in India than UAE.
That's right.
So I think if I'm sure the frozen space is as relevant for the frozen category as the chiller space is for
B2B chiller space. Absolutely. Yeah, Vikran, Sailesh.
Well, I think one thing which we all know and not know is that especially people in RTE ready to eat know about this, that there's a technology called retort technology. This is a technology which actually deep heats the product and in water, so the food is put inside and it goes and inside, and it does not make the natural the nutritional value to go away, while it kills all the bacteria and virus inside, and then you seal it. And actually retort technology, the product like a ready-made dal and all, is something which possibly is because of the mandate of FSSAI, you have to write 12 months or 18 months, but it actually can last 3 years. And possibly technology will have to be a facilitator. We'll have to use more of retort technologies and technologies like that, which actually keeps the product fresh because of the technology, the way you use the technology. And I think that is something which will be a facilitator.
Okay, great. Vikran, Kiran, Ashu?
So from my point of view, I think what's going to drive my kind of a category is essentially the consumers need to experiment. Consumers today are far more exposed than they ever have been. They're sitting at home, they're bored, they're watching a lot of videos, they're sort of spending a lot of time figuring out what to make for their kids, for themselves, for their families. And that need is going to drive categories like the ones where I'm operating.
Okay, fine. Not really a category, but sure. Another trend that will kind of help this. Sure.
Correct.
Kiran and Ashu?
I think you know, the love for exhibiting your culinary skills, etc., where the Western food products, you know, RTC or RTE, etc., it's going to grow, and thanks to social media for that. And I think there is a big category coming up next with this kind of a trend.
Ashwini, you said it. Give me more freezer capacity in retail. Only 1 in 10 outlets have a freezer. And even if we can tick that box, I think the freezer capacity at home will get solved with frequency of buying.
Okay, got it. Okay, awesome. Fantastic discussion, gentlemen. That's all we have time for. Audience, we will be back tomorrow at 4 with a different topic. CMO week, as the name suggests, is there all week. But before we close, can we quickly have the AV, please?
न पाबंदी हो न कोई हद हो तो बस खुद बनाई सरहद हो। ये मुहिम है परतों में छिपे हर सच की तलाश की, सियासत पर रखी पैनी नजर और आंख की, खबरों की दुनिया में एक जिम्मेदार आवाज की, जुर्म और जुल्म के खिलाफ हर बेबस के लिए इंसाफ की। जब कोई हद नहीं इंसानियत के लिए जज्बात की, जब कोई हद नहीं खुशियों और ख्वाब की, तब कोई हद क्यों हो नए नजरिए और बदलाव की। तोड़ के हदों के ताले नए सपनों को पाले, बांधे सबको एक धागे, आपको रखे आगे। एबीपी न्यूज।
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody. Good
Thank
evening.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.